Yeah, so
That was just
I
one.
can speak with this.
You'll speak and they'll be able to hear it on Zoom.
Sure, let's just share the screen.
Where do you want this, on the bottom?
Yeah.
Good?
Yeah. Everybody on this. You're man. Against the grain. How's everybody doing? So today we're gonna talk about next contract. And first off, start off by saying probably market topics because we're gonna be discussing alternate financing, then contract. One of set the stage as to like why are we talking land contract? Why is land contract important in this market that we're in? So land contract, what is going on right now in the market? What are some things that are going on in the market currently from the listing side? Let's talk about the listing side. What is going on in the market you guys are hearing from the listing side? So days on market are up. Price reduction. What else? Negotiation. So negotiation. Right. Are more popular now than before. The price is still the same. But I don't think there's more of them, but they haven't. What else are you seeing on the seller side? So, and seller statement. Right? Because it's not anywhere near what they thought it would be or what it was last year. What are we seeing on the buyer side? What are we seeing on buyer's end? What are some things you're seeing happening with the buyer? Compare the buyer now to the buyer you had a year ago. Tell me a little bit of difference of the buyer today. Speak, so don't have to raise your hand. Throw what you want. Yeah, that. What else you seeing with buyers? Who's talking to buyers? Talking to buyers. Well, by show of hands, who's working with buyers? You? Sir, what are you talking? What are you hearing? Hello? Big one. What's going on with these? What does that mean? What do they talk? What are they becoming more of? What are the buyers becoming more of? What is the same thing? What does the buyer say? The interest rate goes up. He tells you, okay, the prices are going to go down. Let me go buy. Is that what the buyer is telling you? No. So what is the buyer telling you? I'll wait till the prices come down. What's going on with their payment? The payment's going up. For them to maintain the same payment, what do they gotta do? Four. Very good. So for them to lower the payment, we can negotiate. Buy down the rate. What else? Okay, what else? That's four, or pay for the buy down. Okay, what else? I want to keep the payment the same and the rate went up. What do I have to do, or what can I do? Forget land contract. Right now, you don't have land contract. What can you do? We already talked about it. Negotiate the price down. What else can you do? I want the same payment for the same house. I keep my payment the same. I don't want to negotiate the rate.
Oh,
Higher down payment. So borrow less. Higher down payment. That be a problem for the buyer. They don't have it. Buyers in this market, they have the money, they don't have the full amount of down payment or enough of down payment to keep their payment. Buy land contract comes to play. Who in here, by show of hands, has done a transaction start to finish with a land contract? Start to finish. Good. Beautiful. Who's done 3 land contracts start to finish? Good. I see more of. And I thought next year, this time around, I'm gonna say, how many people did transaction with a land contract? Keep doing the right thing, and you're talking to buyers, and you're talking to sellers, and you're doing your fiduciary responsibility to both, you're gonna have a ton of opportunity to do a lot of land contract transactions. That's why the goal of this class is to actually get us familiar with how land contracts work. Okay? How land contracts work, how the terms get drawn up, what are some things that we need to watch for. We're gonna be talking a few times. Take notes and do whatever you need. Are we clear why this is gonna happen? We're gonna address some of these market conditions, and that's what the land contract will help mitigate some of that problem. Seller that had a property that's not selling, see how the land contract could help them sell it. Buyer doesn't have 30, 40, 50% or 35% down payment that they're asking. Sometimes buyers do have the money, yeah? Where do they have it? Not seasoned, or in a bank account that they can't prove, or it could be in a bank account of another family member that they have full access to, but that family member cannot get a loan or cannot get on the loan, right? So there's all kinds of scenarios why land contracts will be. So what are land contracts typically used for? What are land contracts? First and foremost, a lot of stuff gets done through vacant land. Anytime you have a vacant land, seller owns a vacant land, if the buyer is not paying straight out cash for the land, it's very hard to go and get financing from a bank on 50 vacant land. Very hard. Banks typically don't like to lend on vacant land. They like to see a real estate property attached to that land. So when somebody's saying, I have these 4 acres, 5 acres that I'd like to sell, you always want to have the conversation with them about, should we offer land contract terms to the people who are buying? And then the seller is going to say, well, I don't know how that works. How does it work? Again, the goal of our class today is to explain how land contracts work. For all of you that are looking to go after vacant land, whether it be in commercial, residential, raw land, whatever land it is, land contract is a beautiful vehicle for you to be able to sell and transact business on it. Unique properties that the bank is not do financing on. Example, you might have some properties where the bank says the property is in a condition that I can't really lend them, right? I can't do any sort of lending, conventional lending. The seller is selling a property where the house has gone, or there's no kitchen, or the garage is leaning. And the bank says, well, unless you fix the garage, I can't lend you. Buyer doesn't want to fix it, seller doesn't have the money to fix it, right? But they want to sell it. So we use it for unique property. Or properties that don't fit in the criteria banks may want it to fit in. So anytime you're faced with a property, when you go on a listing appointment, or when you're talking to a buyer who is property, anytime you go to a listing appointment, you're talking to a buyer or a seller, and you're presented with a unique property, a property that you think, I don't know if a bank would lend on this, huh? Ask the seller. The question, would you be open to selling it on a land contract? Buyer, would you be willing to buy it on a land contract? Again, what usually comes after that question from the buyer or the seller? Does it work? That's why we want to educate ourselves. New construction, same thing. Few banks do new construction. And there was 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Still, the amount of banks that do new construction are far less than the amount of banks that do normal purchase. So an owner or a seller of a property may offer buyer the opportunity to buy the land or buy the property that they want to demolish and put a new construction on. They may offer them a land contract for a short term, so long turn around and go get a conventional loan. Okay? Future project kind of goes along with the vacant land or with a vacant residential property or a residential property that they're going to make an addition on. Or they're going to turn around and refinance the full money out of to be able to do it. They may offer the seller land contract, short-term land contract for long term. Or a standard sale, regular sale. A regular normal property, the seller says, well, I'm open to do a land contract. Or the buyer says, can you find me a property that I'm willing to do a land contract for? Any questions on what are land contracts used for? Good? Okay. Now, what is a land contract? Simple. Buyer and the seller of a real property in which the seller provides the buyer financing. So the seller acts as the bank. The seller acts as the bank for the buyer. For the purchase, and the buyer repays the loan installment. All that talking about. Oh, I need to buy this. Careful when you're talking about a land contract that you do explain to them. Seller is the financing institution. A lot of buyers fail to understand, like, why is the seller asking for this? That's not fair. Or why is the seller saying this and not fair? No, I'm not going to do that. Okay. Understand that who is the party in control when it comes to the financing of the land contract is the seller. So they're going to have certain set terms in place. You can negotiate. But more than likely, very few times buyers are able to dictate terms of a land contract. Very few times. Very few instances. Okay? So who is holding the power of the asset and the lending in a land contract transaction? Seller. Buyer comes in, says, willing to buy on a land contract. What are the terms? But I will say, well, if you give me this, if you give me that, I don't want to do, you know what, they're being greedy. Well, okay, fine. Then go get a loan and pay and do whatever you do. Buyers need to come in from a place of, I want to say, attitude. Seller is willing to work with them, willing into them on a land contract. Now, sellers are not saints. They're not angels. It's not like, oh, they're doing it and there's nothing in it for them. We're going to find out. And just do it. The seller to sell on a land contract. But at the same time, there's also a change for the buyer to buy on a land contract. But it's simply a contract or an arrangement between the buyer and the seller. The seller provides financing. The buyer repays the loan. Simple. Who's the agreement between? Who's it between? Is it between Khalid and Ashubi or Muqdad? Is it? Between the buyer and the seller. So our job is to facilitate whatever arrangement needs to take place between the buyer and seller. Who's putting up the money to help them land? Seller. So who's the underwriter? Who's the processor? Who's gonna say clear close? Thank you. So please put some perspective on it when you're talking to your buyers. Let them understand. We are kind of dependent. We're under the mercy of what the seller likes, can, won't, allows us to, doesn't allow. So it's very important to understand it's negotiated between the buyer and the seller. Is there something on there that says, here's what you have to do? No. Like right now, it comes, what do I have to do? No. The seller say something, and the buyer say something else, and the buyer say something, and it's not negotiated. The bank, when you go to the bank, the difference is the bank says you have to put X amount down, and this is the rate I have to give you, and these are the conditions you have to supply. The land contract, there's none of that. The land contract is basically whatever me and the seller, or the buyer, and whatever me and the buyer as a seller agree on. Simple. Any questions on that? Good. Now, how does the land contract work? There are certain terms in the land contract very clear on from the get-go, negotiating the land contract. Starting off with the purchase price. You have to agree on the purchase price. Now, property list price, in no shape or form, property list price, offering price, and not shape or form binding to the seller when selling the property. Yes, sir. If I list the property for $120,000, do I have to sell it? Good, so we're awake. I thought you guys were sleeping. Repeat the question. So if the list price on a property is $120,000, the seller is offering land contract. The buyer comes in and says, give them $120,000. A land contract. Does the seller have to? Okay, so the price is what? Negotiable, or could be arbitrary by whatever the seller puts it to be. Good? How about the interest rate? Negotiable as well. Are there certain rates that we can't go above in the state of Michigan on land contract? Yeah, it's higher than 11. I think it's in the 20s, low 20s. Yeah. Have I seen low 20s? Not really. I have not. But I have seen interest only 20% thing. Yeah. Okay. So I haven't seen a mortgage amortized over 30 years at 20%. But I have seen interest only 20%. So anyway, the point being, check with your local authorities or local jurisdiction, whatever you're doing the loan. Some of you may do land contracts that are not in the state of Michigan. That's fine. You may help a seller and a buyer transact. They want to do a land contract, make sure that you're abiding by it. But this is also negotiable. No rate that's locked. Can we lock a rate with the seller? 30-day lock, 50-day lock, 60-day lock. There's none of that. It's negotiable. How about the loan term? Negotiable as well. What's the typical loan term in a conventional mortgage? 30 years, it's convenient, right? The land contract, you don't have to have 30 or 15 or 5, 6, 7 years, 55. Whatever the seller and the buyer, we negotiate. But we have to set those, we have to talk about those before we actually engage in putting a purchase offer and the seller signing on the purchase offer. Be part of your negotiation. Payment and installment amount. What the buyer expects to pay every month has to be laid out. And we have to also get clear on what is that payment covering. That payment covering. The principal and interest. Only. Or is it principal only? Is it a lump sum? Monthly? Every 6 months, right? What is my installment amount are? People do land contracts and the buyer pays $2,000 every month, and then at the end of the first year, he takes a lump sum of $10,000 and pays the seller. It's not written down, and they agreed on it verbally. The seller can't come at the end of the year and say, Ali, where's the $10,000 you promised me to pay the installment? Written, right? What I'm gonna have to abide to is what's written on that contract, on that legal agreement. So if your seller wants certain things done, guess where we have to put it? The agreement, in the form of an addendum. Talk about that. I have to be clear on my payments, on my installments, on my schedule. Are they monthly? Am I making installments every 6 months? Am I not making installments? Am I going to make payments for the first 3 years? What am I going to do? Here. We can't just say, yeah, he wants to sell on a land contract. He's going to pay $20,000 down. He's going to offer him $200,000 and we're ready to go. How do I start the first agreement? What do I? We need a lot more than that. Down payment. Down payment. Very negotiable. Very negotiable. We have land contracts that get done $10,000 down. We have land contracts that get done with $100,000. Some sellers may require more down payment. Now, if your seller is charging interest, higher down payment, you end up making less on the loan. Does that make sense? Versus if they take a lower down payment, they're going to make more money on the loan. So your sellers have to also play that balance of, I want to take a higher down payment and give the guy the loan and really, I can sell it without a land contract, or do I want to take a smaller down payment and make my money off the loan? We'll talk about that. But we have to be clear on what the down payment is. The down payment has to be accepted by both. Buyer should be able to come up with a down payment. Seller should be able to accept the down payment. This gets negotiated. This one gets forgotten a lot. The responsibility for taxes and insurance and any other fees like HOA dues, water bills, any assessments that come to the property being worked on. There's a bill that comes in from the city of $1,200. Who pays it? Right? Why? The buyer. I don't know why. Not my house. No, I don't own the house. Buying on a land contract. Okay. What? We'll talk about that. The idea is there's no buyer is responsible for it. Have some land contracts where the seller says, you know what? I'm going to pay the insurance and the taxes. I want to make sure that they're paid, 1. 2, I'm going to factor it into the payment. We have other scenarios where they said, no, you give me the payment. When the tax bill or insurance bill comes in, I'm going to give it to you to pay it. I'm going to rely on the buyer to pay. I don't know. Banks, when you go get a conventional loan, what do banks do sometimes? What do they set up? What do they set up? They set up escrow. Some sellers may say, I want you to set up an escrow with me. Every month you pay me an additional tax amount so that when the tax bill comes in, I can pay it. Or the seller may say, I don't want to manage that escrow account out and out. When the bill comes in, I'm just going to give it to you and you pay it. Negotiable. They also have to understand when the fees come in, who's responsible for those fees? Okay? The buyer is the seller. Very important, and it gets forgotten. Then a balloon payment. Does every land contract have to have a balloon payment? No. Land contracts get paid way before that, or their amortization does not carry a balloon payment. Common land contract, most commonly used land contract, end up with a balloon payment after 5 years or after 3 years. Meaning the payments that the buyer is making every month are not enough to pay the balance of the loan. So the seller will say, I'm willing to do this for you, but I'm not a big bank. I'm not Chase. I'm not gonna be with you for 30 years. God knows what happens in 30 years. I'm gonna give you the financing for 3 years. After the 3 years, you owe me this lump sum. How do I pay it after 3 years? Well, you're gonna get a refinance, or you're gonna go get a normal loan. Hopefully your situation changed. Or he may come back to the seller and say, would you like to extend my land contract for another 3 years? Seller at that time may say, you know what, you've been paying on time, things are going well. Yeah, why not? We'll do another 3 years. Okay? But most of the time, sellers don't commit to that renewal early on. They first want to see, how's Jaffer going to pay me? You're going to make payments on time, you know, headache. You're not going to give me a headache. Is he taking care of the property? Is he not taking care of the property? Right? So I'm going to try the first initial 3 years, and I'm going to assume I only need it for 3 years. So when buyers get into land contracts, buyers' behavior and their way of life should be worked on towards ability to get a loan, pay off the land contract in 3 years. Does that make sense? Or 5 years, or whatever the term is. More than often, a lot of times, what ends up happening is the buyers get lazy. They think they're like renting or making payments to Chase or Bank of America. I'll pay the guy $1,000. But they're not taking care of their financial situation like they should to be able to get a loan in 3 or 5 years. Does that make sense? So one thing we have to educate our buyers on is the fact that you are in this land contract on a temporary basis. This is not a one and done loan. This is not like going to Clover and getting a 30-year fix or a 30-year mortgage and telling Clover, yeah, I'll make the payments from now till 30 years. Okay? So we have to be very clear on the balloon payment and how the balloon payment works. There's a few things that we're going to talk about on this page, starting off with recorded versus non-recorded land contracts. You'll often hear people say, okay, this document that I have, this piece of paper that basically says, Tonya is the seller, finance is the purchaser, Jaffa, and they have a land contract between them. They're just holding on a document. This document may be recorded at the county or may not be recorded. So some states require recording that contract. And it's not one of them. Some states, you must record the land contract. Not record the land contract. Any non-recorded land contracts are considered void, null, not valid. You buy a house from somebody in another state, I don't know the state. Michigan, it's not. You buy another state, you're holding that piece of paper and it was never recorded. You never informed anybody officially that you bought on a land contract. That paper is worthless. You have no right to the property. No, you pay X amount down payment. That's why it's very important to understand the laws of whatever we're conducting the land contract. In the state of Michigan, recording a land contract is not required. Not a land contract, a non-recorded land contract, and still that would be enough proof that you actually own the property. Okay? So recorded, non-recorded. We'll talk about sometimes why would somebody want to record it, why would somebody not want to record it. Okay? Second one, so it gets recorded at the county. The buyer does not gain full title of the property until it's paid off. Very, 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 very misconception on what title, who owns the property when a land contract is sold. When a property is sold on a land contract, who owns the property? Who? 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 Seller. When the property gets sold on a land contract, who owns the property? Seller owns the property till it's paid. What does the buyer get? Buyer gets what we call equitable title. What does equitable title mean? Yeah, but what's equitable title? Correct. What can I do with an equitable title?
I can sell the property, rent it out, but not like, rent it in a well.
but I don't own it outright, right? So I'm getting an equitable title, meaning I can go take that title and refinance and pay. I own it for the sake of refinancing, I own it for the sake of selling. I can sell, but I gotta pay legal owner of this title. The seller always has legal title, so this is always the seller's position. This is the buyer's position on the land contract. Equitable. Equitable means marketable. I can market it. Whatever I want to do with it. I don't have legal title to it until I pay off the land contract. So the process moves from equitable title, goes on the market, let's say for sale, it gets sold, the title company changes the title from equitable title to legal title to the legal title to the new owner. Or to an equitable title to the new owner if the new owner is borrowing and getting a loan. Because who would have the legal title? Who owns the mortgage on their home? Who owns the mortgage on their home?
The bank has.
The bank has the legal title. I'm as the owner of the mortgage on the home, I own equitable title. House is not paid for, I don't own the home. Then, we all want to think we own the home. We don't really own the home, we own the equitable title of the home. Meaning like, just like when you go get a car, you don't own it free and clear. The title's not in your name, it's in the bank, GMAC or whoever it is that you're doing it. But do you have the right to sell that car? What do you have to do? Pay off the legal owner of the property. Legal owner of the home. Buyers need to understand, and we have to be educated on the process to explain to the buyers legally, we don't own the home. Conversation sometimes, but we legally don't own the home. You have an equitable title to the home. And when you're going to own the home legally is when you actually pay off that home, when you pay off that land contract owner. That's when the ownership of the title gets transferred. Okay? Not paying could cause buyers to forfeit rights to the property entirely. In the state of Michigan, default on your mortgage, mortgage bank, default on your mortgage. State of Michigan allows you what they call a redemption period. Redemption period could be up to 6 months, to where you can redeem that property by paying off owed balance to the bank. Okay? In California, there's no redemption. The day you lose it, it's gone. And Michigan is only one of 7 states left that do that. They're working very hard on getting rid of that. So eventually they're not gonna have redemption periods in Michigan, or at least that's what they're trying to get away from. So now the law is, if you lose your property, you don't make payments, and the bank forecloses on you, forfeits the property under a mortgage foreclosure, right? You have the right within 6 months to redeem that property. Pay the bank off with you own the property. Walking around with the lottery ticket, you won 25. How much was the lottery last time? 400. It was in the billions. You win it and you say to the bank, "Hey man, I know I didn't pay you, 3 months now. I know you're in foreclosure, but I'm going to go ahead and pay you off now." The bank says, "Okay, the 6-month period, I'll allow you to redeem it." Be careful. Those laws in the state of Michigan, as it's done with lending, do not apply to land contracts. Most sellers' land contracts that are done professionally right, which we're going to talk about who should do the land contract for you, do not have a redemption period. Meaning, if I'm in a land contract as a seller and the buyer does not pay me within 30 days, I can immediately announce the property foreclosed and I forfeit on it. I take it back. Whatever amount it is, it could be 10 days. It could be 3 days. It could be 3 days. It could be 3 hours from like 9 a.m. By 12 noon, the day it's due, he doesn't bring it to me, I'm taking that property back, they lose every right to the property. And guess what the law allows them to do? As a land contract holder, it allows you to do that. Because who's the bank? Seller. Seller is the bank. There's no bank. Now, they don't do that to big banks. They don't allow big banks to do so because institutions usually looked upon as, well, you can work with the consumer. Seller is also a consumer, just like you. See why the laws are a little bit. I'm a seller. What do I own? I own this one property. You're not going to drag me into court, send me, and require me to send you notices, and another notice, and a third notice, and yes, we took it to the court. That's a job of like corporate attorneys. That's understandable on the bank side. Very acceptable on the normal individual side. Does that make sense? So be careful when you're doing a land contract. There may not be a need for redemption. Your buyer misses a payment, like Fatin was saying, let's say they miss 1 month payment. If the land contract is written in a way where they can forfeit, sorry, they forfeited. What about that? Now I have the money, I can pay it. Did they lose the down payment? They lose the down payment. Say it with confidence. They lose yes, they lose the down payment. Mr. Buyer, make sure we're getting into the right contractor so you understand. You have to make the payment. You have to make the payment. Seller has every right to take the property back. With no redemption. So we don't get that grace period. So knowing your options and have it documented as it relates to seller and buyer. Sellers have options in the event of a forfeiture. Buyers have options in the event of forfeiture. The buyer wants to negotiate a time frame. Say, for example, I missed 1 payment. I'd like in the land contract to state that the seller will allow me additional X amount of days to make up the, if that's what they want written, guess what it has to say? Documented into the land contract with language. Don't assume, everybody goes late. Everybody goes late on their mortgage. Well, 15 days is nothing, right? We hear that all the time. I'm always late on my credit card. People will say, I'm always late, and people accept the payment from me. Why is the seller being difficult? Never know who you're in business, who you're getting in business with, especially if you're on the buyer side. Do we really know the seller? Most of the time, we don't really know what the intentions of the seller are. We have to assume the worst for our buyer. And we have to protect our seller. If I'm representing the seller, you bet. I'm going to go to my seller and say, I am not going to allow the buyer to be able to redeem. I want to allow you to be able to forfeit on the property as soon as they go 30 days late. And the seller has the right to put fees up, late fees, for payments not made on time. Yeah. I can say every day they don't make the payment on time, it's an additional $60 to the payment. Picking up. Don't make it, it gets added to the payoff. Make it in a way for the seller. And I'm also, if I'm on the buyer side, I gotta figure out a way to like not get my buyer into an agreement that they can't breathe. So very important to understand the forfeiture, the foreclosure, and missing payments, what that leads to. Assignment is a big one. Assignment of a land contract. Who can tell me a little bit like what's an assignment of a land contract? Assignment of the land contract. Yeah, of the land contract itself. So I get into a land contract. I get in a land contract with Al Shubi. Right? I'll say, you're buying it from me, I reviewed your stuff, you're making me the payment. Shubi had a roommate, girlfriend, friend, cousin, wherever that they were working with. And Al Shubi decides to move to Tallahassee. You know what Tallahassee is, Florida? Yeah, so he decides to move to Florida, and he says, hey, Mr. Seller, just want to let you know, my cousin, you've never met, but me and him have been making the payments together. You've never met. I don't know who he is. I don't know who he is. He's making payments. He wants to take over. No. Go read your land contract. It says you cannot assign that land contract. I need you to pay me the money. You have 30 days, pay off my loan. Land contract says, yes, he is allowed to assign it to whoever he wants, I'll say, okay, you're fine. I need this one, but the assignment of a land contract gets spelled out. It gets spelled out. You can assign, and in the event that you need the assignment, this is what is required of the new assignee. As the owner of the land, of the house, holding the land contract, I'm the assigner, right? He's the assignee. He's the one person that's coming in and taking the assignment. I might say, okay, well, I'm requiring you now to give me an additional 10,000 or whatever is spelled out to the assignment agreement. Not all land contracts can be assigned. Contract it will not be any longer. Correct. Correct. Yeah. It will have a rider to where now he like from a liability standpoint, he's not the person that I legally want to go after. Yeah, selling it would require you to pay off the land contract. If we're selling it outright, you want to put it on the market, I have a lien, it would require you to pay me off. But you're saying, we can't pay you off because he really wants to keep the home, but I want to get myself out of it because I'm moving. He's going to stay making you the payment. He's now your new person that you need to go after for the payment.
That's over into the contract without payment for. I have a land contract, I paid 100. I give him. Without, like.
Selling. Without selling.
Without being,
That's the assignment.
okay.
But you can put a sign in front of the house and say, I want to sell it. Someone comes in, pays you 200,000, you get back your money that you paid, and you pay me off, and my loan balance was 80, and you say, thank you very much. Now you own the home. You can turn around and sell it to Ahmed on a land contract. You can do that if you want, if it doesn't have an assignment. But if you want to simply just say, hey, he's going to make the loan, he's going to assume it, right? I'm going to assign it to him. Is it okay? I'll say, no, your land contract, you cannot assign. Or I can say, yeah, but here are the conditions if you assign. So sometimes a lot of land contract holders will say, if you want to assign it, I would require an additional $25,000. The new owner will say, I can't go get a land contract anywhere else, and I like the house, and you know what? I like the terms that he is in. Additional 25,000, okay, it's fine. I'll just pay the 25,000 and I'll stay in the house. I'll buy it.
But for those parents, first sign the land contract.
Correct. Most land contracts, now we'll talk about how they get drawn or whatever, but most land contracts have set things in them. Addendums are always needed. To either remove items that are under that you say, I'm not going to abide by that, or to add items under that are not under. If there are special circumstances between the buyer and the seller that are not in a standard land contract, everybody almost often uses. Again, remember the land contract, the contract is who's drawing the agreement terms, buyer and seller, right? Like negotiating it. However, I would like to pay you 1,000 in May, 1,000 in June. Come July, I want to give you 5,000. There's no bank out there that can draw those kind of terms, conventional bank, but a land contract allows you to do, bind you to do. Good? Good? We always have to have addendums to either remove certain aspects or certain features of the land contract or add to the land contract. Correct. If the original land contract says assignments are allowed, if the language in the land contract says land contract holder may assign the land contract to anybody without seller's consent, then you're good. Most land contracts will say assignments are not allowed without seller's consent. Seller's consent means I'm always going to go after no matter who he does. He wants to get the payment from Hassan, he wants to get the payment from he wants to get the payment from I don't care. My relationship is with the person who took the originally the loan from me or the land contract. I'm going after him. But if it says yes, you can assign it, he can come to me and say, I assigned it to so and so, he's your person. I'll say, are you the person? Yeah, I took it over. Okay, thank you. Don, I'm gonna give. Yeah. Oh. Gonna talk about that next, coming up. Gotcha. Any questions so far on this? While you're there, if it wasn't on there? Yeah, then he'll say, do you know for a fact that you're assigning it? Who's that person? Some of them, some of the people in the land contract, they want that person's information. Day one. I'm a seller on a land contract. Someone comes to me and says, hey, would it be okay if I, in the future, assign it to Hassan? And I'll say, why isn't Hassan doing the land contract with you now? And something suspicious, maybe because his credit profile or his profile is a lot more superior than the other person, and they're trying to hide foreclosure, trying to hide bankruptcy, trying to hide collection, trying to, you know what I mean? They're buying it for someone else. So one thing that sellers need to be careful of, if I'm selling it to A, that A is the actual beneficiary of the land contract. A is not buying it as a small screen for B and C. If that's the case, and I know that, I would want to see who B and C are. Because really, who's my people making the payment? Of course. Of course. Yeah, you could put, yeah, I mean, that, just because I'm selling it to A, doesn't mean A is the one living there, A is the one making the payment, A is the, all I know is I'm getting the payment. But if I know for a fact that A may have some plans to actually not carry it, okay, well, I'm doing it for them, then let me talk to them. Understand what I mean? Because eventually that's who my payment's going to come. Normal loan. Someone dies, the loan is still owed, property goes to probate, it's owed. Marketable title. Has to be paid off. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Both on title. Yeah, same thing. But I'm saying, like, in the event, let's say it's a single guy and he dies, he has a land contract. Oh, payments are going to continue from family member, and then it's going to be the loan. Or payments stop, then I'm going to foreclose and say, go ahead and sell it or I'm taking it over. Follow the same normal title. Okay? Now, so for some reason as to why then contracts get used. So what are then contracts getting used for the buyer? They can't get approved for that's not documented. They have bad credit. Or some of them actually have good income, good enough credit, good enough down payment, but they don't want that debt to show up on their debt to income rate, underlie that they're doing some other, you know what? Doing some other project, I'd like this land contract for 2 years. 850 credit or 8 whatever credit score. I have the down payment. Here's the proof. I have the income. Here's the proof. Here's my tax return. Lot more welcoming with the seller because like someone who can actually go out and get a loan. But they may want it just so they cannot have to show it on their credit report against their income. That's against their income. Okay. On the seller. Why do we use it for the seller? Let's go back to the very, very original. What did we say for the listing? What's going on with listings right now? Stays on the market. Does offering a land contract help us get the house off the market quicker? A bit, yeah. Does it help us hold off a little bit on our price reduction? Does it give the seller more negotiating power? You know, the negotiating power is with the hands of the buyer. But if I offer land contract, I'm taking that negotiation power back from the buyer and saying, well, I'm going to give you land contract, it's going to be my turn. The seller's more happy now that they got the price they want, they got the terms they want, they got the payment they want, they moved away with the cash they want. Okay. Land contract, advantages to the seller, is all the things that we talked about. So your seller, higher purchase price, than what they normally would have gotten if the property was to sit on the market 18, 20, 30, 40 days. I'm not gonna do price reduction, I actually secured my price, I might get a little bit more because I'm offering land contract. And a higher total sales price when interest is factored in. Remember, they're gonna become the bank. So we're gonna talk about the payment, how much of it is interest, how much of it is mortgage. It's really negotiable on how you want it structured. Now, advantages of a land contract. What are some of the advantages of a land contract? For buyer and seller, both. Easier financing, right? Easier financing. There's no overlays like it is with the bank. Appraisal, and then send the inspector and have the appraisal come back and clear this condition. It's a lot easier. You're dealing directly with the lender. Faster, you move the closing fairly quickly if all the terms are being agreed on, and the seller is willing to sell, buyer is willing to buy, funds are available, everybody's in agreement, title work is ready. Let's move faster. And there are no lender costs involved. Typically, underwriting fees, processing fees, all those type of fees that get attached to the loan application or to the mortgage application are gone with a land contract. Allows the buyer more flexibility when it comes to loan solution. This is what I'm comfortable with. This is what works for me. Typical bank would say, well, it doesn't fit. Yeah, it doesn't fit our, you're trying to fit into this loan program. What you want doesn't fit in our, denied. Whereas here he can say, well, I can do this. How about that? And seller would say, yeah. So I have more flexibility for loan solutions. For the seller, one of the benefits is a steady flow of monthly income that can come in from the property. Right? So I can increase my income monthly on a monthly basis. Always we want to talk about, when we talk about deals for land contract, we want to talk about a win-win. Remember, the seller wins and the buyer feels they're not winning, more than likely something will happen where this will not close, or if it closes, it will not continue. Buyer feels they won and the seller feels they didn't win, they're not going to agree to it. They're going to say, no, man, I don't want to do this deal. So always look in your negotiation for win-win solutions. Okay? Mr. Seller, here's how we're going to win. Mr. Buyer, here's how you're winning. You're winning because you're able to do what it is that you want to do. Mr. Seller, here's how you're winning because you're able to do the things that you always got to find out what the need is. What does the buyer need? Seller may tell you as simple as, you know what, I just want the ease of worry about the payment. Payment can come to the bank directly at the end of the month here. I'm going to give them the bank account information. Can they please put them? I don't even want to deal with them. I don't want to ask them about the payment. I'd like it directly, automatic. That's all the seller needs, and you address that. Buyer can win on other things. The buyer may say, I can give them 30% down. All I need is 2 years for this land contract. Then you do. You understand what I mean? So, but you have to understand the need. Every seller's need is different. Some sellers may require more of a down payment. Say, I don't care. I'm going to call them every month to pay me, but give me more of a down payment. Others may look at it differently. I have 2 questions.
I guess it's comfortable dealing with in the bank, collecting. I know listening.
Yeah. The down payment itself is if I'm a seller and I'm buying and the property is buying $200,000, some guy says I'm going to give you $50,000 down, which is 25%. What trust effect? They don't make a payment. I'm going to foreclose on them and take $50,000 and move on, take my property back, and move on and do something. Yeah, larger down payment for sure provides that trust. I don't know them. I'm not. No matter what I do, I'm not going to know the buyers. The banks don't know the buyers. The banks, all they do is they paint an image of the buyer. Oh, look, he's got an account that has 50,000 in it. You know, do they really know us? Does the bank really know me? No, they know me on paper. Like, so at the end of the day, seller, same thing. They're not. digging into my soul, see, am I a good guy, am I not a good guy? They don't know, they don't trust me when I'm gonna make a payment. What they trust is they trust the process that in the event I don't make the payment, there's a sizable enough asset that I can go back and take it. That I can bring around and rip it.
Let's say 1,700, 1,300 goes to mortgage right away. And whatever the balance told me, thought about it, like, in this case, I mean, the seller, we can own the house.
Can't talk about that. They can't, period. Hello, we'll talk about it. There's certain things the seller cannot do just because they own the home. They don't have the equitable title. Taking out a loan on the house is an equitable title. You don't have the equitable title. You have the legal title to it. That's like saying you went and bought a car from GMAC, and then GMAC turned around and took a loan on your car. No. Can they?
No.
You own the car? No. So, no different. Seller here owns the home, has a loan out, and for you, he can't turn around and go get another. We'll talk about that. Okay. Sure. So, what are some disadvantages? Buyer is dependent. What does it mean that the buyer is dependent? When I say the buyer is dependent in a land contract, what are they depending on? Yeah. Doesn't mean like if I say the buyer is dependent. Who are they dependent on? The sellers. Sellers. Some of the disadvantages is the buyers are not in a position, right, to freely do. They're under the mercy of the seller and the seller's conditions when it comes to a land contract, right? And they are dealing with an individual at the end of the day, right? Even it could be an institution that did the land contract. Still, at the end of the day, they are dealing with the terms of that land contract. Buyer is dependent. Another disadvantage is the contract stipulation, right? What the land contract stipulation says. Just to give you a piece of advice, you are seller side listing. You want to sell on a land contract? Have the seller's attorney and or the seller draw up the land contract terms. Okay? Good? Clear? If you are on the buyer side and you go show a property that the seller agrees to sell on a land contract, try to push for the buyer to go and draw their land contract terms with their attorney. Clear? So what are we trying to do here? Our interest. Protect our clients and our position. My position is the seller. I want to protect my seller. I want to go for this no redemption, be a forfeiture, 30-day late, don't talk to me, tell me. So, like, I want all those things in there. I'm a seller. If I'm on the buyer side, I want as much leniency as possible. Hey, if I'm late, first 5 days, no penalty, and on 10th day, I pay. I may go back and pay you. I may allow me 45 days. Right? Have the attorney draw favorable buyer terms in that land contract. You're representing the buyer. Does that make sense? Now, contract stipulations get in trouble when we kind of like, oh, it's on a land contract. We did the land contract addendum. Title company did it. I don't know. Now we have an issue. Guess what happened? Take that land contract addendum. The issue is with the seller or with the buyer. They take the land contract addendum and give it to their attorney. And the attorney says, how did you do this? Here, the buyer and blah, blah, blah. Or they would say, buyer, how did you do this? This is seller, they don't know the language. Very important. This one is probably the most important thing. Because in here, 1 + 1 + This one here, 1 plus 1 does not equal 2. Here, 1 plus 1 equals 2. Interest rate, price, payment, quantitative, very quantitative. Put a number to it. But I can't put a number or an interpretation of, you can assign if you lose your left leg while skiing, you know? You understand what I mean? There's a lot of different things that you can put in the language to where make the buyer feel like, oh my God, I really can't do anything with this property. A lot of it also has to do with remodeling. Sometimes our buyers, what do they want to do? They might want to remodel. Some land contracts will not allow them to remodel. You cannot touch the property. You cannot make any alterations to the property. You cannot alterations to the property. You may not break walls, add walls, make additions. You may not. And the reason they say that is because the seller doesn't want to take an unfinished project. So let's say, for example, you sell the property on a land contract. Buyer comes in and says, land contract, Yalla Latifi, let's go. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? We're going to go to Home Depot. Yeah, let's go. Let's come. Right? I know this because Latifi is one of my very good dear buyers. Ran to Home Depot and did the same thing. She went, got it, opened up her credit card. Husband lost the job. The frame on top of the house. He couldn't make the payment. Seller came in. What the hell is this? What is there's snow? There's snow coming into the. It was he actually lost money on that sale. Why? Because the project was unfinished. We want to make sure the attorney draws it where the buyer is allowed to make alterations or improvements to the property, and the seller signs up on it. Guess what? The seller signs up on it. But we can't. If the seller dropped the land contract, in the land contract stipulations that I give to the buyer's agent to tell him here's the terms that your buyer has to agree on, it might be in there. You cannot do any addition. It might allow minor remodel, but it might not allow him to do any addition. Buyers may not want that, so it's on them to review. So always what I'm trying to say is this stipulation here, it's very important that you present the party that you are helping for the land contract. Just because seller is offering land contract, it's not. Buyer agrees. Just because the buyer wants the land contract doesn't mean anything. I want to see if my seller agrees to it. I got to throw it up. Higher interest rate, obviously, we all understand why a land contract would be a little bit of a higher than the going market interest rate. The seller is taking a little bit more of the risk to give the land contract, and secondary market. It's not your A paper, it's not your prime lending, it's not your top-notch criteria for lending. Ownership, we talked about it. Equitable versus legal. Equitable versus legal. Buyer has equitable title, but your car that you buy, private, you can do whatever you like. You just can't sell it without paying off and getting you don't have a title to it. CMAC or whatever bank has a title to it. You don't have a. Yep. Recording, we talked about recording versus non-recording. Now, who asked me why would record it, why not record? Someone asked me if they owe a mortgage. Most of the time, seller owes a mortgage on the property. That's on a land contract. Seller wants to sell on a land contract and a mortgage on the property of $100,000. And the buyer comes in and wants to buy it, but the seller cannot pay off. The $100,000. And the land contract the bank, he owes the money to that there was a sale taking place to the property. That's when the land contract does not get recorded. Now, recording versus non-recording, really going to come down to trust between the buyer and the seller. I personally would not buy on an unrecorded land contract. Would not. unrecorded land contract does not protect the buyer. I want to do the best I can to have that recorded. Okay. An unrecorded land contract, basically relying on that piece of paper to in the plan, and there's nothing recorded in the county that there is a land contract on place. Once a lien or a land contract memorandum, call them land contract memorandum. Briefly, I want to wait until understand this. You record the land contract, I gotta send everything in the land contract down to the county. So anybody that goes and looks at public record will say, oh. I have all terms. The land contract, I record the land contract, I'm recording everything, all 27, 30, 40, 50, land contract terms. I'm recording a land contract memorandum, all I'm saying is, there's a land contract. Memorandum, doesn't go over the price, doesn't go over the terms, doesn't go over the payment, doesn't go over anything. Land contract out that property. In either case, there's a chance that the bank gets notified. Either case, whether you record a land contract or you record a land contract memorandum, this is more of like private stuff. Okay? Either case, there's a good chance that the bank gets notified. So if the seller owes money on the property, the seller may come back and say, can't record it. I mean, if I record it, I owe 150,000, unless you can pay me 150,000 so I can pay off, I can't record it. Now remember, what does the seller also pay when we're involved? Not only the down payment has to be enough to cover payoff, it has to be enough to cover his closing costs with the commission, right? So if the buyer says, how much does he owe? 100. I'll take 100. We actually need to pay a little bit more because cash to close or cash away from closing will be more than. Okay.
I owe 100,000. And land contract with you and record it. I have a loan.
Right. You do a land contract with me, I'm the buyer.
You're the buyer, I'm the seller, if I still.
What is that? I know, I just want to see what, is it good? Thank you so much. Trying the whole class. I'll divide it then contract. I'll land contract with me and she can explain it to you. I'll be okay with that. Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry. So you 80,000 you owe on the house, you didn't report it. What would the bank do? If I reported it. On your mortgage, you're the seller, on your mortgage that you signed with that bank, there's probably what we call a acceleration clause. So immediately, upon change of ownership or upon any lien going on there, upon any memorandum affected, the bank may say, Ahmed, 30 days to pay us off. 30 days. I know what you're doing. Right? That's why most sellers will say to the buyer, I owe 80. Can you give me the 80 so I can pay off the loan and get the bank off? But you as a buyer, not me as a buyer, I wouldn't want that 80 because if you stop making payments, I lose the property. Let's explain it real quick. You're the seller. Sonia is your bank. You're making the payments to Sonia. I come and buy it from you. 50,000, 80,000, 40,000. Not enough to pay her, but you don't pay her. I'm making the payments to you, yeah? I'm not making it to Sonia. You're the bank. You decide to stop making payments. What's she gonna do? Goes on you. What happens to me? I have no recording. I gotta go chase, right? So I'm gonna have to sue you, but you're losing it anyway. She's gonna take over the property. Does that make sense? So it's very dangerous. properties or properties where the buyer is able to satisfy and pay off. So the seller, we need a payoff to close. The money from the seller will be due from seller X amount. That will be taken, we'll tell the title company, okay, we're paying off that loan and we're giving it the principal back. Okay? Each? All right. A buyer and seller need an attorney to draft a land contract. If they don't, highly, like the highest level of Mount Everest highly, get an attorney involved. One, be selfish. You guys care about your license, right? Well, I do. We all do. We all work hard to get our license. In drag, well, Jafar, you told me fine, and I trusted you. That's the worst thing they can tell you. I trusted you. If I knew that was going to be, I wouldn't have signed. You didn't tell me. Avoid that. Give it to the attorney. Saying, you know how much it costs? $250. They have a draft of a typical land contract. They may ask him a few questions. Would you like this done, or are you going to change it? Okay. Would you like this done, or are you going to change it? Okay. Would you like me to do this one? That okay. They're just checking all the points. Don't take the risk on yourself. So I highly recommend, if you're working with a seller, say, who is an attorney that you recommend or that you use, or who you would like. If you don't, I can recommend someone. Let them draft the land contract for us. Protect the seller. On the buyer side, agreed on the general terms. Let's now put them in writing. That's not, the first agreement doesn't say anything about a land contract, correct? First agreement just says that you're buying it, closing on this day, putting this much deposit, and that's it. It says on the first agreement, land contract addendum attached. Work on that with the attorney and get the land contract terms in place. Does that make sense? Yeah, joke it down. You want to use.
Or seller isn't requiring, they don't want to use anybody else for.
Do what? Repeat the, I'm sorry. You have a seller.
Seller isn't,
Saying that.
yeah.
Yeah. Good. There's a reason why.
Out there where they go.
Where the seller does
Your
not use.
experience,
Yeah.
for land.
Yeah. I see a lot of agents get in trouble because they use a blanket, like a generic land contract. They don't. It's some page. They're not reading it. I don't care how good we are. We don't even read emails. We don't read 5 lines in an email. We're not going to read 27 pages. So I have a lot of agents. Yes, I have a lot of agents that will say they don't want a land contract. If they sign the land contract, and then the problems are not going to happen at closing. But guess what's happening at closing? When he goes to make the payment, and then it's shot in the neck, and the seller got the payment the next day, and there's on a land contract, I have the right to shoot in the neck if they pay me. What? Where did this come? Okay, so the point being, yeah, I see many scenarios where they're using a draft land contract. Do not do that. I'm giving people advice from experience. The seller, you're comfortable with this land contract? Good. Someone reviewed it for you? Good. That's what we're going to use. Come on. You have a buyer that's interested. Here are the land contract terms. Please have your buyer review them. Guess what the buyer's going to do? He's going to take it to his attorney, right? And he's going to say, here's what they want me to do. What do you think? It's $250 an hour. 2 hours on it, well spent. Because it's $500, thousands and thousands, right? Purchase agreement, and you write down on there, land contract, blah, blah, blah. You agree on the general terms of price, interest rate, payment.
Just like we know, right up,
Perfect.
then you'll have it.
Right, the addendum doesn't have anything that, the addendum that we use doesn't have anything. It just talks about what's your principal and interest, what is the balloon, what's the monthly payment, what's the stuff like that, tax and insurance. Well, I'm saying the actual land contract itself, the document, that cannot come from us. And don't rely on what the title company gives you. I don't know what title company the seller is. So let's say you're representing a buyer, right? And the seller is selling it on a land contract, and the title company is fly-by-night title. I'm just saying, let's say the name of the company is Fly-by-Night. I don't know what they have. I don't know what their document is, right? How am I gonna tell my buyer, oh, go ahead, they're a title company, you can use their land contract? No, I'm gonna say, okay, but I wanna review it, I wanna see what this is. So that's why always, don't rely on what the title company gives you. In a land contract, and there's not gonna be many, right? It's not like every transaction you're doing, there's a land contract and the attorney is getting involved in it. Those are happening 1 every 5, 1 every 6. Involve the attorney. Hey, Mr. Attorney, would you mind giving a look at this? This is what they're having my seller look at, or here's what they're having my buyer sign. Can you see?
Are you recommending?
Why would we say? Buy the house that your land contract?
No, I'm just.
So no. I know where you come from. You come from a place of where you wanna help and provide, and they pay for that shit. It's their house, their kids, their family that needs to live. They pay for that stuff. We're nothing to do with it. Your job is to protect them. Your job is to be a fiduciary responsibility and saying, Mr. Buyer, hello, I think we need to be careful about this. Where you would be doing them the biggest disfavor is if you're like, just, I don't know, I'm not gonna, don't worry about it, I don't even know what's up, what I have to do. Hello. Hi, how are you? Something good for you. Oh. Welcome. So, no, just recommend. I recommend that we speak to an attorney about the land contract. How does the payment get calculated? 2 different ways. Based on a land contract. Some people do interest only land, shorter term, and a smaller amount. They do interest only. So let's say, for example, buyer borrows 100,000, right? Borrow 100,000. 100,000 at 10% yearly. What's the interest rate? So the buyer may tell the seller, or the seller may tell the buyer, your payment monthly is 800 and whatever it is, 100 a month. That's interest only, and you pay the tax and insurance. After the year, how much is the balance? The loan. Yeah, after a year, seller is paying. Seller is making interest only. What's the payoff after a year? Would he? What did he pay? Paid interest. He never paid down the balance, so his payoff doesn't change. Never paid down the loan, so you're charging him 10% for 5 years. All he's paying is interest. That's an interest only. Or the buyer or the seller may say, let's calculate it as a normal mortgage payment. We'll get on a mortgage calculator. We'll do a 30-year amortization, 100,000, 11%. Your payment is X. This much of it is going to principal. Actually, this much of it will be going to principal. This much will be going to interest, right? But at least you're paying some of the principal down. Your payoff changes. So you get, for the payment, how the payment gets calculated, either interest only or regular principal and interest. Did they lease the property? Right, can they lease it? So that's a question to the seller, can they lease it? If they can and they want to lease it, fine. Think of it this way, what if this loan amount is 200,000? The guy gave you 50 down, selling it for 250. Right? You hit the down payment, the loan owed is 200. Now at 10%, this is what? 20,000. Now your payment is 1,000 something every month. Now the lease and the payment is around the same. What's 20,000 divided by 12? Your phone, just use your phone. 20,000 divided by 12. 1667. 1667. That's comparable to Iran. Here's the nice thing about this versus Iran. The insurance and the taxes are gonna be paid by the buyer. Property maintenance are gonna be paid by the buyer. I basically kind of sold the home, but I'm collecting rent at the deal. I will accept it. I would. On any property, I would take these terms. So I'm gonna hold it for a year. The property that I bought for $250 might be worth $310. I turn around and sell it, and I say, thank you for lending me $200,000. $1,500 a month, I'll do it. No, you write me a check for $200,000, I'll take $1,500. Easy. Right now, give me 200,000. Right now, give me 200,000. I'm willing to give you 1,500 every month. Right now, today. When I take the 200,000, I'm going to invest it, or I'm going to make something with it, or I'm going to do something with it. I might turn around and actually buy a property and lease it for 1,600 and pay you the 1,600. Still own the property. I'm still building equity on the property. I'm still hoping that the property appreciates. Don't lose. You don't kind of lose. So the answer you have to answer, like why would people do? Because there's some people too that have a lot of cash laying around. That's their only way to actually be able to conduct a transaction or real estate transaction. They can't go to the bank. They can't get a loan. No matter if the rates are 3 or the rates are 7 or the rates are 12, they cannot. So the rate at 3% does not get every buyer into the market. Don't kid yourself. When we went to 3%, not every buyer was still able to buy. There are people that still did not show income. People that did not have the assets in the bank. There are still people that needed land conflict. Seller comes in and provides that service and says, you know what? I'll give you interest only 10%. Do it. Buyer would say, yeah, you know, I'll do it. He may be getting a lump sum. He may be getting a lump sum in 6 months and say, thank you very much. I'm going to pay it off. Done. Yeah. On the property, see a property that I think, you know, pays or whatever, I probably won't do it. There's a lot of equity potential in it. I'm gonna do it. Does that make sense? Get what I mean? Yeah. All depends on the scenario. Give you an example, real quick. It's a true example. New subdivision. Guy that bought one of the homes being built, he knew he's buying early on, because once the home is done and completed, it'll be like 400,000. He turned around and sold it in 5 years when the subdivision was all done, like 120,000. He borrowed the loan. That's all he took. That's the money. Built the house. Only payment. Depends on the usage. That's why that contracts are very popular, because whatever usage you want to do it for. We talked about like using it for new construction, special projects, anything. All right. Last thing we want to talk about is any final thoughts you have, any takeaways, any questions. Answer them in like 5 minutes, and we can break. Final thoughts. Who likes land contract? All of you should like that. All of you should like that. No reason why not to. If the seller agrees to give you the land contract, yeah. very often. Listen, if the seller, very good, if the seller continue to face this, sellers continue to face this, they're gonna be more and more inclined to take a land contract. Rates keep going on the rise, buyers shrink, they get hesitant, and they're thinking, I can't get a loan, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, and a seller does not get the price they wanna get, and their home is sitting, yes, they're open to land contract. I have people that actually call any listing that's 30 plus days on the market. Agent, call property that are 30 plus days on the market. The seller open to selling the land contract. They can themselves pick it up for an investor as a rental, or may have a buyer in place that. So just because the property is not advertised as a land contract doesn't mean they're not willing to do it. Guess what happens sometimes with the listing agent on the other end? He doesn't know how a land contract works. He never talked to the. There's not a whole lot of agents sitting in a room like you guys are getting training. There's some people are now eating at Detroit 75. The light out of it. Lighten it up. You gotta lighten it up. You gotta lighten it up a little. But you know what I mean? Like, there are listing agents that don't know how a land contract works, right? Yeah? You agree? Yeah. So there are agents out there. All right. There are agents out there who are putting listings on the market that don't know how to explain land contract to the seller. You call and say, hi, I have a buyer. It's been on the market for 55 days. Is the seller open to a land contract? Won't be surprised if the agent tells you, I don't know. I don't know how these work, so I didn't really ask my seller. Perfect. Would you mind us talking to the seller or asking the seller if he's open to land? How does it work? Then you talk to the agent on how it works. You're educated to tell the agent. So the point being is when you go on Realcom, don't just look for land contracts. Because the ones that say land contract are probably people that are aware of and know how land contracts work. But if there's a seller sitting out there with a property on the market for 120 days, come on. They might be dying for someone for a land contract. Their agent doesn't know, nobody presented it because it wasn't offered. So you have agents that call on any listing that is on the market 30 plus days and just ask, is your seller open to land contract? Especially if they are rental worthy. If they're rental worthy, a lot of investors love land contracts. It doesn't tie up their credit, it doesn't tie up their income. Dealing with an individual, they don't have to go through the layovers of banks. Love it. Okay? Any more questions? Going once, going twice. I hate agents. Go ahead now. Go ahead. We'll take one. Yeah, investors. Yeah. Yeah, they usually do. They usually let the seller know, like, I'm gonna let you know we're gonna be remodeling the home, or I'm gonna be doing. Remember, like general maintenance, like paint, carpet, look. Most sellers don't oppose that. You're making the property better. What sellers fear on a land contract is open projects where, additions where, or you rip the roof off and then you have someone coming in to do it and they don't show up and then the property is jeopardized and then you don't pull permits, right? And the city comes in and slams violations because, again, let's go back. Who's the legal owner of the property? The seller. So the city, as far as they're concerned, he's the owner. So they don't want that. And contract, if it's recorded and the sale has taken place, yeah. During a recorded land contract. If there's no title involved and there's nobody involved in it, but between the buyer and seller, it's not recorded. No one knows the sale took place. It's a risky thing for the buyer. You understand how it could be risky for the buyer? Not just the seller, the buyer too, is taking a risk by not reporting. Try this one more time. Any more questions? Going once, going twice? If not, done. See ya. Thank you, guys.